Next up on BBC One, Doctor Who returns in colour. Ah! Ah! What's happening?
Yes, that's right. Welcome to the 70s in 10 seconds or less, or maybe more. We have colour. And glorious film. A children's fantasy series trading itself in for Quatermass cults. I can never tell if it's really brave or really cowardly. But it is a solid adventure in its own right once it gets focused. A limited villain plot, but this shake-up of the status quo is so bold and effortless that you don't realise just how good of a reboot it is till credits roll on part 4. Hello there. Are you Doctor Who and the Silurians? Oh, it's just magic. Adult tentpole sci-fi magic. Mostly it just boasts a meaty political core with important self-critical, socio-political, crucially British subtext that we don't quite find ever again. There's also a T-Rex. That Handshake is the show growing up in real time. Genius. The Ambassadors of Death. A first contact story told in total earnest, even though this happens every week in this show. Frequently interesting, but monstrously padded. The OG script would have lent some goofy energy. Or a pulse. But hey, I guess Quatermass is in right now. Too restrained for my liking, but I get why this season works for so many. Look, I love me some Geofizz as much as the next man, but I think this rating shows more my total intolerance to classic Who's sound design. Yeah, it's loud and claustrophobic by design, but it's like a blaring car alarm that won't turn off. Oh, you don't have to go to a Nazi timeline, Doctor. There's plenty of fascists in your own unit fam back home. Any rich thematic or environmentalist dynamics are overruled by these guys, who conspicuously never come up in chats about it. If you feel like turning off now, I won't take it personally. My dear Doctor, those Autons are a bit of a terror. To most it's the lesser of two Autons, but to me it's a bit darker and way more inventive. I love it when the crew just set out to blatantly antagonize children. Delgado's first appearance is charming and oddly restrained, which is cute because nothing else in the story is. If Joe and the Master were anything less than miracle characters, you would get so sick of them. Okay, so we got a prison set for next week. What else are we gonna fill the 6-parter with? No, come on now, Don, that's just a box. What you mean the baddie is a teleporting box? Action! What? No. Mind of Evil is a budget Clockwork Orange for the kiddies, which actually is pretty admirable in its own rights. This one should have been a write-off. Put this in any other era and it would be one of the most lambasted ones in the show, but we've got Delgado, we've got Manning, and we've got Pertwee, and watching their little subtleties with one another could sustain me for 12 parts, never mind 6. The script asks for sympathy and nuance from its young audience, and it gets it. The Claws of Axos! On paper, Axos doesn't step a foot out of line, but that's exactly why it's too safe. If it wasn't for Delgado's sheer effortless charisma and side-swapping galore, this is right where the weekly master fatigue would have set in. Just set this alien invasion apart from the others a little bit, guys. Put it on the NATO world stage, and it would be infinitely more exciting than spaghetti interiors. And shouting at the brink. Doctor Who and the Doomsday Weapon. If you're boring, it's called Colony in Space. Doomsday Weapon is a Malcolm Hulk machine that condemns the bureaucratic futility to late capitalist games. It's about the limits of democracy. It's about an alien cult, worshipping their own atomic bomb. It's about stakes in every step and great twists, and it's really grown on me. Revolutionary Pertwee's back, and he sells everything from rational mediator to untrustworthy exile. He doesn't reject the Master's offer of world domination immediately, and I live for that kind of nuance. No patronising, no trope archetypes, just absolute class. The Doctor's better than a hero. He's a union man. And thus, yes, sorry, what I was trying to say was, Hail Satan. The demons! It's mid. I'm not a complete contrarian. The final episode is gold. As iconic and cozy as it gets. But have you seen the 4 episodes of phone tag it takes to get there lately? The villain just stands around and spontaneously combusts after not doing anything. Doctor Who vs. Satan should be so much better than this. You can keep Bok though, he fucking rules.
All criminal elements must be tracked down and destroyed.
Oh, so it's just Terminator? Yes, but with more murder. Day of the Daleks is bizarrely ahead of its time, even without the special edition. There's something so sincere and kitschy about it. In the Radio Times, this was a big season opener. Event TV. See wonky Daleks. A doomed future. Behold the Doctor, riding a tricycle. But the Controller is one of my favourite villains in the history of the show, and so infinitely watchable. It has the appeal of a Doctor Who 70s movie. Just not the budget. Never the budget. Casa Paladin. It's my favourite classic serial. One that I could never do justice to. I'm already biased, I'm already on board for a diplomatic creature feature set in a spooky castle. But it also has the BBC's one good fight scene, and aliens with real dimension, characters who can sit down and reason with one another, and a story that rewards them for doing so. Alpha Centauri is just an added bonus. Turns out that making the third Doctor eat some humble pie suddenly makes him into one of the best. Peloton isn't the UK in a one-to-one parallel, so you get a social issue tableau that's as lived in and impactful today as it was back then. Doctor Who and the Sea Friends has so much rampant personality, so many bizarre and funny choices that our cinema screening at the BFI was cheering louder than Avengers Endgame. Malcolm Hulke has copied his own homework and given us a Silurian remix that reminds us to salute the troops, which I dutifully did after every single part. Every single institution depicted is corrupt and oafish and incapable, except for our bold boys at sea. It's not terribly interesting, and it does forget about its titular sea friends. But like so much of the Barry Letts era, this is just devoted to fun, first and foremost. I wish I could revere this one as structurally or even creatively as I did as a child, but we've gone from shaking their hands to decking them with Aikido. Hiya! Spaceship white interiors, I sleep. Disco lit caves, I wake. It's a 3. It's as 3 as 3s come. It threatens commentary on apartheid, but lands on a bizarre, cowardly centrist moral at the end. It's a pertwee story about Robert bloody Mugabe. If that sounds up your street, it probably is. But wake me up when he becomes the rainbow butterfly. Woo! How strong was the acid in the 70s? Hold your fucking horses and put me in the maze. It's the Time Monster. The Master takes charge this week as a protagonist, with protagonist goals and protagonist obstacles. And then, suddenly Atlantis. Really, it's a big end-of-term unit Christmas party with nuts visuals and antagonistic pacing. Despite directly, knowingly playing for time, it's still tough to get bored when Benton's being turned into a baby and the Doctor's fighting a Minotaur. The Unit Years is a cult show relishing in its own golden age.
I am he, and he is me.
And we all go together, cuckoo cuckoo. The Three Doctors is the first anniversary special, and it owns. But it's also the first anniversary special, and it shows. It's a lot of high-stakes meetings in rooms. 2.5 Doctors battle against Globby Glob monsters. It's basically standard procedure. But at the same time, a big Time Lord epic, and you know what? It's filled with big surreal set pieces. I'm not quite sure if the crew knows how to celebrate itself yet, but Omega and his world are fantastic. The tightest unit story. I admire Pat Troughton's ability to come into any era of the show and completely steal it. And then at the end, Doctor Who is given a big birthday present. Time and space privileges unlocked. Carnival Monsters, the real golden age for classic Who, is right about here. But this one was so impressionable in my young mind. I can quote it from memory. If you can get past the first aggressively odd 5 minutes, this is probably the ideal core reading for newbies. Genius visuals with a playful tone at all times. Inventive new threats at every turn. I have a big crush on Joe Grant. Somebody buy me a Drashic hand puppet. I'm reading my notes and it's just purely childish reasoning here. Good, that sums it up. Carnival rules. So, imagine Star Trek if it went beep 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 every 5 fucking seconds. Frontier in Space is a story stitched together by the interstitial bits that usually get you to the interesting parts of stories. Pure padding incarnate. Because there's nowhere to go. With all of this prison cell hopping, you would think the Draconians would invest in better security. The big payoff for sticking through 6 parts of time-wasting junk is a teaser for the next one. You can have a little Daleks, as a treat. Luckily, Joe and the Master make it a really funny story, like always. But even Delgado's exit is just botched. If Carnival had the strongest cliffhangers in the show, this one has the worst.
Planet of the Daleks.
Look, I'm sorry, Mr. Nation, but this is very clearly just your original Dalek script from the 60s. You've put some Tipex over the character names.
Truly, genuinely a Season 1 copy-paste. But man, do I like seeing those rebels overthrow those darn Daleks. John Pertwee is on top form, under threat of getting upstaged by some pepper pots. Through him, you believe the setting, fear the baddies, and get humbled by some stellar anti-fascist quotes. They made this story a decade ago, but the World War II parables are no less striking. Finally, I'm with you on the same page about the Green Death. It feels good. The one where Jo Grant outgrows the Doctor. And you know what? The show doesn't condescend to her, she does it. Yeah, maybe she does trade in one tufty, snobbish scientist for another, a younger model. But honestly, it's good casting. Stuart Bevan could have been the Doctor. Jones is such a natural fit that I wish he'd been a recurring face of this whole era. I could care less about the plot. Maggots, iconic but half-assed. The real appeal of the story is the Brigadier secretly enjoying living in a hippie commune. At one point, they feed the Brigadier some corn, and I think it radicalizes him.
Oh, yes, quite very silly.
Letting even kids know that the fight against fascism isn't some fictional thing you watch on Saturday evenings. But dry your eyes, mate. It's time for a Sarah Jane adventure. The Time Warrior is really as good as people make out. But the real talent is in Lynx's rich characterization. Forgets on Taurens, Robert Holmes' greatest invention is Lynx himself. Childish, proud, and mawkish as he interacts with his medieval setting. Sweet, sweet genre play. Sladen bursts through the fucking door, giving the show the feminist adrenaline shot it desperately needed. And Pertwee's action stunts and cool charisma make it feel like he's got 10 seasons left in him. Welcome to Bletchley Park. The political eco-angle doesn't complement the toy dinos, and the tiny dinos don't fit the ridiculous ambitions of this season. Misplaced confidence. Episode 1's abandoned London and Sarah's space subplot, they briefly intrigue me, but this feels like a parody of itself and the Pertwee formula. Finally, it's been pushed a tad too far. No level of budget would help this one. Dumb B-movie charm is all it has left. And no, you are not going to make me interested in Mike Yates. I'm sorry, it's just not gonna happen. Death to the Daleks. Ba-dum. Nick Briggs has entered the chat. I completely understand how this could instantly become someone's favourite. Having to team up with paranoid Daleks, a great, alive setting. The props and the dedication of an actual movie. The city of Exelon is the nation's greatest creation, and the lore behind it could carry the episode alone. But everyone's firing on every cylinder. The show is so alive and capable. The Terry Nation creations have come very far. Monster of Peloton? More like the diminishing returns of Peloton! That said, easily the most directly progressive and vocally political story of the classic show, but most of that is delivered by the electric Liz Sladen, in what is easily her finest outing. Hang on, if the Ice Warriors are baddies again, does that detract, or does it add to the pacifist union's subtext of Peloton? I'm thinking about this too much. Frankly, Big Finish does it better. Planet of the Spiders. Welcome, viewer, to the final episode, season finale, of The Jon Pertwee Show. What seems like a fun vanity project turns into a tacky, wacky celebration of the era. But every episode of this era is a celebration of the era. The Pertwee era is pretty full of itself. Regeneration, written under a Buddhist lens, is fascinating, and Pertwee's Doctor having to be filled with the kind of personal care afforded to revival doctors is next level. Delgado's presence is sorely missed, but the pace is so fun that you don't have much time to focus on the crap fluff. It's a time monster with spider puppets. Hello there! Uh-oh, lock up your wives, Titty Tingler Tom's on the scene. The titular robot is very TV annual. which makes it even stranger when it turns out it's a secondary character being used in a neo-Nazi scientific reform militia. Sarah gets all the best bits, except for Tom showing off in part 1, which is all anybody seems to remember. Really dark for a story that ends like this. Oh, so it's just Alien? Yeah, but 4 years early. Shut your mouth. Ark in Space is extremely efficient sci-fi. It's no budget, with 3 side cast members, 2 rooms, and 1 roll of bubble wrap. It's admirable that the stakes hold the whole human race in believable danger, but it's not much for substance. Tom shows all of his surprising, captivating range in just 50 minutes, equally grandiose as he is mean. He's like a newborn, eager to impress. I just see all the missed potential for more obstacles and, drama. Ironfield Commander Sty of the Torture Potato Brigade. Look, sometimes you just gotta go on location and get chased around by an alien. Just don't expect me to give it a standing ovation. It gives the season some much needed fresh air, and Baker some broken bones, but it's not even really trying to be anything. Past a couple iconic quotes and some killer cliffhangers, all it has to offer is gory fun. Davis, your mission is to state the obvious and find something new to say about Genesis without resorting to hot takes. Yeah, okay. I love that nations return to the original concept of the Daleks so literally. Finding a way to make the World War II allegory even less subtle, Skaro is dense, making you keep track and care about the world map. The reimagined rebel versus fascist factions are gold, to the point it's like you've never even seen it before. The Daleks are kept at a knowing distance, allowing us to focus on the godly Michael Wisher, who's already half Dalek in every way. Next time you watch it, keep an eye on Tom Baker. He takes a step back and lets Michael Wisher have the scenes. And the two of them together results in probably the greatest Doctor Who villain of all time, let's be real. Revenge of the Cybermen. Oh, to be Liz Sladen, floating away from Camp Cybermen in Wookiee Hole. One expressionless stoic species fights another expressionless stoic species. The Doctor and Sarah are around? The health and safety nightmare of a series ends, and I think the actors are visibly happy about it. Every time there's a Vogan on screen, I want to punch my TV set. But they're no less dire than the easily riled, emotional robot men. Whatever. Dear the Zygons! Some people call this Scottish unit story self-parody. What an absolute stretch. But I could see how you would think that, because it's not very good. But that said, I wonder if people on broadcast could sense how outmoded the unit formula was by this point. Fantastic villains, a less fantastic villain plan. Planet of Evil is the most intense case of whiplash in any of these fucking things. Glorious, glorious first half that then hard traps you on a dull spaceship with dull lackeys. Come on guys, we just did Alien! And Forbidden Planet! It's a truly boggling use of budget. Like, what's the appeal of a bottle episode when the characters are so deeply, unforgivably bland? A bad time is what it is. I wish bad things for every character in this story. That's not a normal criticism, Sam.
Your bad is my good.
That is, of course, except for when it's Pyramid of Mars, because Peridomar slaps. On paper, there's little separating this from, say, Time Monster and Atlantis, but some slick villain designs and the season approach just elevate it. Why this week are the stakes so high? Because they're high every week now. It's terrifying and I love it. Sharp dialogue and sharper ultra-violence. Period of Mars has created more fan work and budding writers than some entire seasons. Android Invasion, on the other hand, is a wet fish. Like, come on, didn't we just do duplicates? It seems like a nice idea to put on at first, until you remember how seriously it takes itself. Thor and Sarah are autopiloting so hard that it results in Doctor Who's most forgettable serial. Yeah, and this has Tom, Liz, and the last of Unit. For it to be Doctor Who's most insignificant, least memorable outing is really something amidst the show's heyday. But hey, if you can't be competent, be lightly funny, I suppose. Yes, it is indeed morbing time. Forget Shelley, Brain of Morbius is punk. I wish I could watch this one as a kid again, really tap into it, because that design alone is intense. This is the only Hinchcliffe horror remix that I would call transformative. But whether it's The Matrix or The Sisterhood, there's always innovation whilst digging up the old classics. Somehow, it maintains its position of being equally horrifying and gross as it is goofy. Shame on Chris Chibnall for treating a fun thing so earnestly. Seeds of Doom. Oh, so it's just Day of the Triffids. It's big, gothic and beloved, but it's just simply not very Doctor Who, is it? It's a pastiche that rips off so much from other sci-fi that Tom Baker forgets he's Doctor Who. There's visual variety, an episode 3 change in location. Mwah! We love those. And a whole memorable cast of quickly deteriorating nutters, but the baddie is still a big green blob. The TV show has finally fled units, but has picked up some of their bad habits. Quick! Tell me anything about the Mask of Mandragora. No, too slow. Much like this serial. I swear that the Doctor used to do more than run around castle grounds hurting people. was that another show? Doctor Who now is a show about glowing lights and companions getting brainwashed in part 3. Any other deviation this season is rare and welcome, and Mandarora doesn't have many. The Hand of Fear is as close as the 70s come to a character piece, and no, that's not actually a compliment. When I was a kid, anywhere I went was a Doctor Who story waiting to happen. Hand of Fear and a nuclear power plant just gets me. But it's just kinda limp. It'll make you miss Sarah, but an already slow story devolves into 20 minutes of this.
It is mine! Mine by right!
My god, Eldrad goes from an A tier villain to a F tier villain in 10 minutes flat. Turn it off. Unforgiving material that the 3 leads managed to pull out of the rubble. This is becoming a bit of a trend. Okay, so it's a Manchurian Candidate ripoff, not to mention a total sausage fest. Sorry Sarah, no chicks allowed. But there's simply no other Who story that looks or feels like this. Edgy, history-making TV that introduces genius concepts that'll stick around until cancellation. Deadly Assassin changes the show forever. Nightmarish cliffhangers and the coolest, most fucked recasting I've ever witnessed. Part 1 might be the most atmospheric bit of TV since the pilot. The Evil One! Mystifying, gorgeous story with Tom and his most mythical. Hey kids, so just to catch up, the Doctor went on an adventure off-screen where he added his own consciousness to a supercomputer that then developed an identity crisis, got really into eugenics and bondage, and made 2 species in his own image to kill one another. Got that? Good. Thank God Butcher stops the plot to explain the mad high-concept plots of the little kiddies. Part 3 loses me, and it does every time I rewatch it actually. But if there's one moral we can take away from this, it's that even AI cannot replicate Tom Baker. Oh, so it's just kablam? Iconic Bakerisms and glam rock opera designs. Fine, it can't be that bad. Over-mythologized to hell and back, sure. It's not quite the murder mystery it purports to be. The plot doesn't even sustain itself to the finish line, but the cast are more diverse than I gave them credit for, and more human than we're used to in these. The ending though, it really is the kablam of the classic era. The Doctor foils a leftist revolution, with reprogrammed robots and a system that's protecting itself. So, there's an elephant in the room, and its name is Yellowface, but even that does nearly nothing to ruin the most authentic and entertaining Who story maybe ever. I'll just be the one to say it. Let me just put this here. Cool. Rich in smoggy dread. I always believe its world and its vibrant characters. Of course, there's a 14-season spin-off from just the side cast. Doesn't surprise me at all. I feel like we could walk down any of these sets and discover the rest of Victorian London just sitting there, which is saying a lot on a BBC budget. The Doctor should not be behaving like this, but that's just more mid-season Tom than anything else. It's a grim little era, and when it uses that grim nastiness to its advantage, you get some stellar TV. Expertly realised, racially outdated, nonsense classic. Rats and warts and all. There once was a tale by Uncle T about the Root and Blob being lost at sea. A great side cast and characters 3. But is that enough to make a good story? The answer to that, sea shanty, is ye. Or yes. Leela's at her very best here, but Stern Baker is starting to really grate on me. Fangrock does everything right to hype up this old sea beastie, except for the creature itself. There's not even a real encounter with the baddie until part 4, yet Terrence Dicks can make it fly by. From this point on, the word grim is going to start coming up a lot.
It is a mathematical certainty that your sci-fi fantasy series will eventually do a Fantastic Voyage episode. In whose case, multiple.
Yeah, this has to be the second or third space fungus to possess the fourth Doctor, and God, is it pedestrian! I'm bored. This might be the first one Tom sleepwalks through. Usually it's the CSO stuff that makes me cringe, but the effects are fine. They're certainly better than what's happening on the fucking set next door. It is downright unfortunate that you have the canine and the prawn in the same episode. Like, it's lose-lose. People tell me that Image of the Fendal is an incredibly underrated, starkly high-stakes hammer horror tale that shows off the best of Tom Baker. But I'll have to take their word for it, because it's almost indecipherable. Goofy moments underpinned by really adult, dark shits. A character will commit suicide in one scene, and then they'll be pouring salt over the baddie like he's a slug in the next. I appreciate the what's happening surreal mystery of it all, but it does result in me asking, what's happening? By part 2. The Doctor doesn't get the plot, and I'm not sure Chris Butcher does either. There's a Ghostlight level of lore to this. It's baggier than most of his stories as well, but that doesn't make it any less shocking. Bloodthirsty and Lovecraftian. I just wish it was in aid of something.
Oh nah, Doctor Who went woke.
The kids take a back seat this week as my adult sensibilities are tickled by Robert Holmes. The Sunmakers comes under fire for being so blatantly unsubtle, but I raise my eyebrow to anybody who wanted anything less. The caricature comedy does wonders for the intensely grim subject matter. The story begins with Doctor Who chatting a worker down from a ledge, and then we end with him shrinking into a little frogman. And that's the magic of Doctor Who. I don't know how to explain it to you any better. Best thing about this one, it's gotta be the gems. Erin, what's your favourite thing about Underworld?
Gemworld,
Gemworld?
Gems.
Out of 10.
7.
Yeah, same. So deeply embarrassing. It's a big Gallifrey epic that ruins the Time Lords. A Leela departure that throws her out harder than Sarah, and with the wrong love interest. A TARDIS adventure that removes all the mysticism, and I hope you're not a big Sontaran fan. Everything in this story is that Sontaran. By sheer association. It has one momentarily interesting gimmick and an evil doctor, but we're kept so in the dark for so long that it's just pain-inducing. And then he goes and picks up a gun when he's back to being the good guy. So, who cares? Write it out. Oh no, this one's a missing episode. In the 70s? Yeah, they just lost it. Crazy.
Where are the keys? Where's my keys?
The role of the Doctor for this season shall be played by Jeremy Clarkson. Yeah, this TARDIS team is negative chemistry, alright. You can see what they're going for in naive understudy Romana, but the psychoanalysis bit gets old. And after Leela, it doesn't suit Baker at all. Tell you who he is great with, the sidecast. Seeing the Doctor being compared to a con artist is my favourite stuff from Tom. He loves this guy. Make him the companion. Couldn't they have just used this guy for, Drax or Glitz for that matter? It's just fun enough, but the world feels barren and it doesn't get me excited for the key fetching quest we'll be going on for the next year. Yo ho, the season's mid to me. Boy, what doesn't work here? I'm not sure I know myself. Tom's distant, a really despondent children's hero in a boy's adventure. It's just cold. You see the flying car and the robot parrot and you think you've got the tone, but it just feels like nobody in front or behind the camera is having any fun at the panto. Walk the plank. Stones of Blood. A technobabble court case, just veering on boring, but so bizarre that no other show would even think to try it. I posit to you that there is no better way to celebrate Doctor Who's 100th serial than a slightly boring but also really weird legal drama about some stones in a field. Still, at least it has an inversion. Android's Atari just commits to everything it tries. Setting, sword fights, suspense, sci-fi, sibilance. Turns out that a narrative back and forth is stomachable when the world is somewhere you'd actually want to visit. And I usually hate doppelganger stories. Convenient cliches abound. Romana is the first companion to get captured twice in the space of 4 minutes. Doctor Who and the power of Droll. Didn't even try. Look, Rob Holmes got tasked with making a big kaiju story, and he knew it was an awful idea, and they were right to stay away. I have a soft spot for it. Even if it's not strictly good, a rampaging physical evil with its own weird alien lore is a different kind of threat for Who. Armageddon Factor. I hate it. Oh, I hate it, and I'm stubborn about it. The most cliche, awful story in the most lifeless, awful season. Name a Who trope, and it's here. Pantomime villains, captured as enemy spies, awful sound design, inhuman, sterile dialogue, tick, tick, tick. When a character like Drax is a highlight in a never-ending, self-hating story, you're in trouble. Destiny of the Daleks. There's tiny touches of Hitchhiker's wit, but this is basically Curse of Fatal Death, a few decades early. Sometimes, sincerity can cover up a lack of plot, depth, or hell, basic continuity. But Destiny is a half-gag stretched thin over basic nation shit. Yesterday's shit. I don't blame Douglas Adams for trying to have fun with nations submitting the same script again. But Destiny is depressing. If it wasn't for the good stories coming up, I would have said Doctor Who has already lost its way. Way before the 80s. Even in his second appearance, Davros feels like self-parody. And he's what you're excited for. But look, you need the Destinies, so that you can appreciate the Genesises even more. Ooh, ooh la la. Despite being the most obvious, earned, fan favourite story going, City of Death is still sacred ground. Scarroff's never come back, Duggan's never been touched. Sometimes I forget that it is indeed Doctor Who. Because it kinda isn't. Great effects, endlessly witty, silly, it's accessible with actual travel included in the time travel. It's the show that Doctor Who has always wanted to be. Show this to newbies. Fuck, show it to anyone, really. Creature from the Pits. Alright. Quiet at the back.
That's a penis!
Erato is gelatinous good, and those who disagree hate body positivity. It seems that one unfortunate effect has tarnished an entire serial for you guys. And it's actually fine. It's very good. If a funny bad costume was all it took, we'd have no Doctor Who left. It's shot well, Romana and Thor are a joy again. Top villains get overthrown in smart ways. Maybe I just have a high tolerance for phallic imagery. But I'm awaiting the reappraisal for this one any day now. Doctor Who says no to drugs. Nightmare of Eden. It's got the scaremongering intentions of the PSA, and sadly the production design as well. I've come around on it slightly, but the Space Freighter Blues is really starting to settle down in the 80s. I'm feeling cabin fever. It's admittedly a little bit fun to have a character just get absolutely munted at the midpoint. K9's cute, but crap monsters, line flubs, and just generic studio boredom hold back a story that's supposedly so serious and edgy. Next time, the Doctor's greatest foe, Thatcher. Doctor Who and the Rise of Thatcher.